So some names that the Mariners were linked to this week, getting away from Geno a little bit, some names that the Mariners may starting to be circling over. Per John Morosi, there was a couple that he reported this week. He was on MLB Network talking about it. He was on 710 Seattle Sports talking about it. There's two names that he mentioned. We're going to dive into both of them. We'll start off with number one. That's Jonathan India of the Cincinnati Reds. I certainly have some thoughts on this. I'm going to throw it to you first, TJ. You hear this name, you think what?
I'm thinking why? I am curiously thinking why the Mariners would be interested in him. They would really have to think that he would bounce back. If you want a little bit of background on Jonathan India, he was exactly last year a league average hitter by OPS plus. 244, 338, 407 slash line, worth just under 1.5 Baseball Reference wins above replacement. A strikeout rate just a hair over 20%. That's below the league average. He walked just under 10% of the time, 9.8% of the time. That's a little bit above league average. He's 3 years into his major league career, so he's in his first year of arbitration in the 2024 season. So he's starting to get a tiny bit more expensive. He's a former first-round pick. He's an infielder in a crowded Reds infield. But I did just mention his hitting stats that are, again, league average, along with 17 home runs that he hit last year. His defense is also not good. Baseball Savant does not like his defense. 8th percentile in outs above average, 15th percentile in arm strength. So you're netting a league average hitter with bad defense who's probably would cost a decent amount, I'm going to be honest, for what the Reds would want for him, because he's young, he's controllable, and he does have some upside. He does have good years in his big league career. His rookie season was pretty good for the most part. He did win National League Rookie of the Year with the Reds in 2021. So there's reason that the Reds would hold his price out to be a little bit higher. I'm just not sure why the Mariners would pay the price to get Jonathan India. That part does not make much sense to me if they're honestly interested in him.
So you did a deep dive there. You gave people the full peripheral view on Jonathan India. Here is my first note for Jonathan India in our prep that we did, or at least the prep that I did. In a nutshell, Jonathan India does not hit, does not play defense. His numbers away from Cincinnati make him look like a fringe big leaguer. And on top of that, he would likely still cost a decent amount in a return, and that may be Bryce Miller. So you know what? I'm good. I am not interested in any way, shape, or form in Jonathan India, plain and simple.
His career numbers on the road are a little bit more balanced. I think you're referencing the numbers he had last season in 2023, which you are correct. He was shit on the road last season. But for his career, it's a little bit more balanced. I think there's only about a 40-point difference in OPS. And for some hitters, especially when you hit in Great American Ballpark, that's how it's going to look, because Great American Ballpark is the best hitter's ballpark in baseball outside of Coors. But you mentioned it. Like, why would they do this? Why would they do this? Like, there are a couple of things the Mariners would like. He doesn't chase. His whiff is above league average. His exit velocity this season, average exit velocity, was actually better than it was in his 2021 NL Rookie of the Year campaign when he won it back in 2021. I think the big difference this season, he was in his 2021 season, he was hitting the ball in the air and dead pulling it a lot more, so he'd get a little bit more extra base and home run power pulling it to straightaway left field. This season, he went a little bit more straightaway in the opposite field, which he doesn't have quite as much power to. There's a big gap if you look at his hit spray chart in this last season where he tried to do that. That wasn't a very effective method this past season. If he was on the Mariners, that definitely wouldn't work, where the ball definitely does not carry as much, and a guy who already has fringe power would have even less power in T-Mobile Park. So this would be a cutting down on strikeouts move. It would be somebody who could play on your infield and someone who's young. But that's where the positives stop with this. And it's struggling to find any more.
Okay, yes, his career numbers on the road are a little bit better than what his 2023 numbers were on the road. But I'm just going to turn this back around to you. You would, if you're the Mariners, would you want to trade Bryce Miller for a guy that put up a 679 OPS away from the friendliest hitter ballpark in baseball, in Great American Ballpark, and then put him in Seattle? Would you want to give up a starting pitcher with 6 years of club control for that? Because me personally, absolutely not.
No, I wouldn't. And I'd also be concerned. I'd be concerned how the Mariners would use him. He had hard reverse splits last year. I mean, hard. He hit righties extremely well, and he sucked against lefties. He was shit against lefties. Knowing the Mariners, he'd be in that lineup against lefties a lot.
Which doesn't work, because you know what Josh Rojas does pretty well? He hits righties. If for whatever reason they were going to bring India here and try to get him off his feet, either against righties or use him and Rojas situationally, which wouldn't make a lot of sense if you were going to trade Bryce Miller for him. But if they were to do that, then there is a clashing of heads between Rojas and India, because Rojas is there to hit righties. India does not hit lefties. He was really bad against lefties this year. So again, like, as a baseball player as a whole, Jonathan India is a fine player. He's fine. But to give up young, controllable starting pitching and good starting pitching like Bryce Miller for a guy that, now again, is a league average bat, does not hit on the road, also doesn't hit lefties, also doesn't play defense, I'm not seeing what the fit here is. Like, I'll be plain and truthful here on this pod, like full transparency. Mariners make that trade, I'm going to be pretty upset.
And here's another thing. Bryce Miller's should not be getting traded for a platoon bat.
No.
Why the hell would you give up one of your most valuable assets for a platoon bat? Does someone want to explain that to me? Because if that's what their actual strategy was, now that could be wrong, because the Mariners trade for Jonathan India and they say he's playing every single day. It's like, well, okay. I mean, he should. You gave up some of the most valuable property in baseball in Bryce Miller, and your young starting pitcher with 6 years of control left. That's as valuable as it gets. You better hope that guy's playing every day. So it really better not be a platoon situation with him.
Maybe in that scenario, India would be at second base. Josh Rojas moves over to third, and that's your solution. Maybe Gino does more DHing, which wouldn't make any sense, because Gino also had an unbelievable defensive year at third base last year, which I guess maybe if you tied this all together and you flip Gino for George Springer and then you traded for Jonathan India, maybe then in that scenario you'd have Rojas at third and India at second, Springer DHing, if you again put a bow on all of this. But I'm not interested in that. Like, I'm really, really not interested in that. If the Mariners were to package Emerson Hancock and one of their minor league prospects for him, like if they were going to package, I don't know, Alberto Rodriguez for him along with Emerson Hancock, I'd say, okay, maybe then I would listen to the chance the Mariners would take on him, since he has some club control. I still wouldn't be thrilled about it. I just don't buy India as a player at this point. But man, if they traded Bryce Miller for Jonathan India, I'm going to come back on this podcast and be very, very vocally upset. Like,
I frankly don't think Emerson Hancock and Alberto Rodriguez is enough to get him. Like, I don't. Like, a guy who had won a Rookie of the Year with 3 years of control, which essentially eliminates, like, for us, like, that takes him off the table. Like, okay, goodbye.
Because
like,
Bryce Miller is way too much for him.
Correct. Right. So in conclusion, Jonathan India, bad fit.